Nussmeier and the LSU Tigers went into Clemson's Death Valley on prime time and came up with a big victory. We're going to get into what that means for Garrett Nussmeier's NFL draft stock and his fantasy football potential. We're going to do that in 3 parts here. I'm going to start with a quick review of my summer scouting report on Garrett Nussmeier. Going to go through the stats of the game. And then we're going to go into a tape breakdown here. Every single throw that Garrett Nussmeier made against Clemson with that A22 angle. Let's get into it. All right, as we get into it here, just want to remind folks, subscribe to the page. This is the first time I'm trying out a video like this. So drop me a comment. I'm always open to feedback. But more importantly, you have to drop a comment to let me know if you want more of these types of videos. So if you enjoy it, please go ahead and do that. All right, let's get into the summer scouting report here because I like to set the stage when I'm looking at tape and evaluating a game. So going into this game, what have I've identified from Garrett Nussmeier's 2024 performance leading the LSU offense? His strengths: arm talent. He fires the ball on a tightrope through the midfield. I really like his ability in his 2024 tape to lead his receivers downfield. And I find that he throws outside of the hash marks with good accuracy. I like his processing ability and his ability to be accurate over the middle of the field when he is not under pressure. He's athletic enough to move the pocket. He can throw well on the run. And he's got this playmaker mentality. It allows him to improvise. It allows him to win when he's playing on the run. Now, on the downside here, he will force the ball into tight windows. He'll make poor decisions under pressure, in particular in his 2024 tape. Struggles with ball placement, under pressure, and when he's working from improvised angles. His lower body mechanics can be out of sync, and he doesn't always finish through with a stable platform. These aren't, damning evaluations. That's pretty natural for a player with just 1 year as a starter, but we're expecting him to take a big step forward in 2025, and that's really why you're probably tuning into this breakdown, right? Do I think that he started that step forward against Clemson? Now, just to set the stage again, my NFL draft projection for him going into this season is day 1 mid. So I do think he's a day 1 selection. From his 2024 tape, I wasn't confident enough to call him a top 10 pick, but this is a quarterback heavy draft. In Superflex leagues, I think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the top 4 of ADP in next year's draft. So I do project him as a heavily coveted fantasy football asset. And I'm projecting him out in my impact starter tier. And that's a weekly QB2, right? So week in and week out, he's performing somewhere in that quarterback 13 to quarterback 24 range. If, by the way, you want to see his full summer scouting report in my full Devy 2026 rookie rankings, dynasty rankings, you can get all of that, the link in the episode description over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard. There is way, way more on Garrett Nussmeier and the entire 2026 class. All right, that's the scouting report. That's what I've seen. But let's talk about the stats. And we're going to look at the stats in a 3-part story. I've laid out the classic stats here, as I call them. And then we're going to dig into some PFF passing grades as well. But let's start with the box score, right? On paper, what did we get from Garrett Nussmeier versus Clemson? He went 28 for 38. That's a 73% completion rate. That is a fantastic number to open the season in a really tough road environment. He completed 232 passing yards. That's good. I wouldn't call that excellent, but 230 yards against this Clemson defense, that's pretty solid. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Clemson defense as we get into the actual film here. He had 1 passing touchdown, 0 interceptions. Of course, you would love to see the LSU offense finding the end zone more often, but he did engineer and he managed a good offense. Did not put up the rushing stats. That's one thing, of course, as we're thinking through a fantasy lens, which all of my videos, all of my analysis is, that rushing number does give you a little bit of pause if he's not able to put up that type of production. But let's dig into the PFF stats, right? Because that can tell you a different story. His passing grade here for this game was a 65.7. For folks who aren't familiar with the PFF scoring grade, that's good. That's not excellent. It's that light green color if you're used to the PFF scoring range, but I really like to break it down short, medium, and deep. In the short field, he was good at 60.2. In the deep field, he was great, 76.1. I mentioned in his 2024 tape when he was under pressure, his accuracy dropped off in the midfield, and that's going to show up here in the PFF grade. So when we watch the film breakdown, I want you to pay special attention there to what's happening over the middle of the field in the medium depth of the field in particular. Big time throws, 2.4%. That's not a super flashy number, but his turnover worthy plays was also 2.4%. And I care a little bit more about that number. These are both important numbers. Big time throw gives you an idea of how explosive a player is. And then that turnover worthy play gives you an idea of how risky that player is, right? So both are low in this particular game. Also quite low. He had a 4.4 average depth of target. We're going to see that when we put on the film here. LSU definitely took a more conservative approach to this game, and we're going to see how that reflects Garrett Nussmeier. But I wanted to give you a comparison point, right? Because if you go back to the 2024 tape, one of the reasons Garrett Nussmeier came back for this year, because there were thoughts that he may declare for the NFL draft because he had a really great first 6-7 weeks of the season. He had a really rough 3-week patch against tough SEC defenses that really showed he needed to come back from another season, right? So I pulled one of those games against Texas A&M in 2024. You could see how across the board, he improved his passing grades against Clemson in the opening game this season. And I would definitely say that this year's 2025 Clemson defense is a tier above the 2024 Texas A&M defense, although that was a really solid unit. So you can see here, he dropped his turnover-worthy plays by over 3%. That's really impressive to me. And he had a higher passing grades at all three levels of the field. So I'm setting the stage here with my scouting report and the stats because I like to give a frame of mind to help guide you into a tape review. So here are my 3 big questions as we go through, again, every throw that Garrett Nussmeier made. We're going to look at those all 22 angles here in a moment. I want you to look for his poise under pressure, evaluate that, evaluate his ability to be accurate in the midfield, and then we're really going to see, can he get a top-tier performance against a top-tier defense that matters to NFL evaluators? It matters to his NFL draft capital. And you know, from a fantasy perspective, that's a really important piece of the puzzle. Now that the stage is set, let's turn on the tape and see every throw Garrett Nussmeier made against Clemson in week 1 of the 2025 college football season. All right, so as we're watching Garrett Nussmeier's throws here, I mentioned I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Clemson defense here. Clemson has the highest returning production for any team this season. Their defense is returning 75% of their production from last season. This is a really strong defensive unit. They have over 3 players, at least 3 players in their front 7 that are going to be top 100 NFL draft picks. They've got a corner here who very well could be a first-round NFL draft pick. So that's the context that we're working in here as we're watching Garrett Nussmeier throw. And you can see early on in the game, it's a lot of short work. I like his mechanics. I think they're looking a little bit tighter here. He's finishing through his throws a little bit better. The sacks, you will see that as a consistent issue in this game. Clemson was able to get the pressure into the backfield, and I think Nussmeier wasn't as evasive as you would like to see a player that can improvise on the run in the way he can. So we do see some rushing ability here. It's not the prettiest. He's got to learn to slide instead of that dive here. And he's struggling outside of the hash marks, in particular at the beginning of the game here. But he is able to find some of his receivers in the short field over the middle of the field. Steps up nicely through the pocket there with pressure in his face, is able to make an accurate throw. Going to see a lot of stuff underneath. Aaron Anderson, by the way, had a fantastic game. He looked very speedy. He had good hands. You're going to see him break off a big play later on in the game. He really is the big winner outside of the quarterback position from this game. There's something to be said for Nuss's willingness to take the short stuff, to go ahead and just get the check down option here. That's a nice pass. That's working through a tight window over the middle of the field. Good touch on this ball, leads his receiver just a little bit too far, a little underthrown. You'd like to see Nussmeier be able to lead his guy into the end zone on that play. That's Garrett Nussmeier. That's the best of Garrett Nussmeier right there. His ability to improvise, throwing on the run. There, another good example, not able to finish that play in a tight window, but I think another good example of throwing on the run, that gunslinger mentality. He's really starting to get into rhythm as we get into the second quarter of this game, and that's when he starts to look a little bit more comfortable and he's more effective. Nice touch on this ball right here. Leads his receiver very well downfield. Maybe a bit too far, but that's a nice example of him working the ball 20 plus yards downfield. Again, another example here, not an accurate pass, but the footwork to step up and through the pocket under pressure. It's good. He's just not as accurate as you'd like to see with the defense in his face, right? And so I think that's where we're identifying a potential to continue improving throughout the season for Nussmeier. Steps up nicely. Again, a little behind his receiver here. So the timing and the confidence isn't quite in play. But again, you're not seeing those turnover-worthy plays, right? There's his touchdown pass. He gets the isolation. He puts it up for the wide receiver. Actually, that's Trey'Dez Green. That's the tight end there that goes and makes that play. So I think overall LSU's approach to this game was a little bit more of a game manager approach, especially as they got the lead, right? They were wanting to play a little bit more conservative. And what you're not seeing with the Garrett Nussmeier throws is that running back Caden Durham is putting him in a really good spot. He's helping them control the pace of the game. So we didn't get to see a ton of Garrett Nussmeier, the gunslinger, but I do think we saw Garrett Nussmeier, the game manager. And that may sound like a negative, but that is an important thing for NFL evaluators. So as we put it all together, right, you've got every throw from Garrett Nussmeier. You have the stats, you have the PFF grades, you have the background of his scouting report. Where does that take us? What are the takeaways here for this game? And for me, it starts with he's mixed under pressure. I do think that he looked more poised, more willing to stay in the pocket, more confident stepping up and through the pocket under pressure. So I would say that's a positive. The timing, the accuracy under pressure, that is a negative for me. But overall, I think he was accurate in the short field. He was accurate in the deep field. I think he was relatively accurate outside of the hash marks, but over the middle of the field, that continues to be a point of struggle for him. And that's not to say that he's not going to improve and get into rhythm over the course of the season. This is week one against a very tough defense. But the big takeaway here is he can win on the big stage. Week one, this is LSU has not won week one, right? They always lose the big game. There's national championship talk going into this season. There's national championship talk for Clemson. He's on the road. He manages the game. He makes the big throw when he needs to. He's able to lead his receivers downfield, and he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. It's a balanced game with a good rushing attack. He understands his place within this game. He's going to have games where he's going over 400 yards this season and throwing 4 touchdowns. And I think Nussmeier's ability to play within himself, to manage this game, make some big throws, and ultimately lead LSU to a rather convincing week one victory, that's going to help his NFL draft stock. I feel better about his chances of being a top 10 NFL draft pick after week one than I did before week one. And from a fantasy perspective, I do still think this is somebody that we can project out for, 260 to 280 passing yards a week in the NFL, 2 to 3 touchdowns. The question is going to be that rushing upside. If you want to think of an NFL fantasy football comp right now, Jordan Love, that's the type of player in production that I see from Garrett Nussmeier, except he's going to be able to put that up in his first year. I don't think you're going to have to wait 4 years like you did if you drafted Jordan Love in your rookie drafts. So again, if you like this breakdown, it's a new concept. I'm always willing to get feedback, but you have to drop me a comment and let me know that you enjoyed it. And that it's worth me putting this together and putting together more videos like it. If you do like it, subscribe to the channel. You'll never miss a video. We've got college football content, we've got Devy content, and we got rookie content all year long. We got a free newsletter at the Rookie Big Board. The link will be in the episode description. But if you want the rankings, if you want personalized advice in the Discord, I encourage you to head on over to patreon.com/rookieBigBoard. That's where the good stuff is. Going to be back real soon with some more insight on this 2026 rookie class.